Welcome to the DIY Goalie Podcast, where hosts and goalie coaches Nathan Park and Connor Monday share their insights on how to become a better goalie. Goalies, welcome back to another episode of the DIY Goalie Podcast. We do have a guest with an interview today with us, but just before we get into that, a couple things that we wanted to mention. First off, just wanted to kind of take a moment to shout out a bit of a legend in the Edmonton area when it comes to the goalie community. We lost a good one last week. Gavin Armstrong out of the Goalie Academy passed away at an early-ish age, kind of 56, I think, or 57. He was kind of a big influence on me. I went and saw him when I was playing, and we have lots of clients who were seeing him as well. So bit of a shout out to him. Kind of sad news for the Edmonton area and the goalie community there. Legend, beauty, and rest in peace, Gavin. Another thing too, you guys may or may not have noticed, but we have started transferring stuff over to the True North Goaltending brand. So the TikTok channel and the YouTube channel now are under True North Goaltending as opposed to the DIY Goalie. And the website is very close to being done. So we'll let you guys know once that gets transferred. So yeah, that's kind of just a couple housekeeping things to start things off. I guess we should also probably shout out Bobrovsky for his second straight cup win, even though everybody
we can
in
just
our
not,
backyard.
and we can just pretend that doesn't exist, and
So,
going at it from there.
We're goalies first and Oilers fans second, but
yeah. Typical order sometimes.
But,
yeah, I just want to chime in there quickly here, bro, just before we get started, just about Gavin. Never knew the guy, but I had a lot of students that trained under him. So I had a few families reach out to me today and just kind of get some solace and just kind of send my condolences and all that. I mean, he definitely left a mark in the goaltending community here in the greater Edmonton area. So it's sad news to hear, but I mean, we know that goalie, that his brand Goalie Academy will continue on and continue his legacy. So looking forward to the cool things that they're going to be doing moving forward.
Yeah, he was the biggest inspiration, I guess, to us opening up the facility because he had one just basically on his like residential property, and that's where you would go to do one-on-ones. So that was kind of, the dream ever since going there. So that's what led to this. So, shout out to Gav. But getting into the nitty gritty of the actual podcast episode, we are joined today with one of our instructors at True North Goaltending, Troy Trombley, who is going to bless us with his insights from way up in the sky. We're going to be talking about kind of the differences between taller and shorter goalies and kind of some of the pros and cons and the different approaches to training. So thanks for joining us today, Troy. Hope you're doing well, and glad we sorted out some technical difficulties.
Oh, very welcome. Yeah, thanks for your help. This is first time here, so don't be too hard on me.
Oh, we will.
Yeah. I guess I'll start it off this time. Taking the spotlight from Nathan. That's typically what I do around here. But let's just get a quick intro on you here. Just kind of a quick introduction, background, just kind of your playing career, how you got into being a goalie, and just kind of your upbringing through hockey.
So I think I started fairly late. I was a player actually up till I think second year Adam, and not a very successful one. And then I always found myself, I'd throw my racquetballs at the stairs and make saves day after day, just having fun as a kid. And eventually I took an interest in it, and I actually I was playing spring hockey and got cut as a player, and they were looking for a goalie. And my coach at the time said he would rent me goalie gear for the first year if I made the team as a goalie, and I did, and so I have been since. So that's kind of how that started.
Nice. That's very much my origin story too. It was the I suck at player, so let's go stand in the net and hope that works out.
Yeah.
So, no, that's awesome. Why don't you let everybody know exactly kind of where you're at height wise, and then Connor and I can shamelessly put our height into, and we'll go from there.
So I'm a shade under 6'7".
Yeah. I'm very jealous. I'm sitting here at 5'10", so anytime I'm in the same room as Troy or on the ice with Troy, it's kind of you know, a bit of a strain on the neck, but
a little humbling for you.
yeah. Where are you
Yeah.
at, Connor? Anyways, you're around
I'm
5'11", aren't you?
I'm 6'1".
Oh, okay. Well,
6 feet,
whatever,
6'1".
guys.
No, so
Whatever.
That's standard right there, Nathan.
Yeah, I
yeah,
know. Well, not in the
I'm
goalie world.
average
Standards what, like 6'3"?
nowadays. Yeah,
Yeah.
typically.
Yeah.
Well, at least the NHL, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, I'm jealous, but it is what it is. So I guess just from your perspective then, Troy, as kind of a taller goalie, because I remember actually, I think it was Devin Dubnyk at one point had done an interview back when he was playing with the Oilers talking about the struggles that come with being a taller goalie. And I kind of was like, what are you talking about? And it made me a little mad. But as I've gone along through the years, I do see that there are, some challenges that come with it. So what do you think kind of are some of the cons or the challenges that the taller goalies have to overcome that shorter goalies might not?
I think well, I'll get to one of the biggest ones after, but I think skating is a big thing. You see young kids come up as even players and have a hard time. Taller kids have a hard time catching up, and same in the goalie world. And I think on top of that, progressing in your game, I think a big thing for taller guys is you open up holes extremely easy.
Yeah.
Way easier than you think. You don't have to move much and you open up holes. And I think as much as I love watching Mike Smith, he's an example to me as he just opens up a lot. He moves really well, very high athletic ability, and I think I got to a certain point in my career just off athletic ability, and then later on I really had to bring structure into my game because I was kind of at a standstill.
So I guess kind of a two-part question, if you will. So just I guess like for you in particular, or even for taller kids, again, like we use Devin Dubnyk as an example here
Yeah,
in the Edmonton area. We talk about kids emulating kind of their game after their favorite goaltender. So I guess the first part to this question was there a goalie when you played that you wanted to play like, and did you kind of find it again like maybe a little bit of a struggle, because I'm saying, for example, like Devin Dubnyk, I would say would be, kind of that role model for somebody who's over 6'5". Um, and it would make more sense for goalies at that height to emulate somebody like Dubnyk, like Dubnyk versus a goalie like Henrik Lundqvist as an example. So I guess first part of that is that like who was your kind of favorite goaltender growing up, and who did you try to emulate in your career? And then I'll get to the second part.
well, right there is a couple Nashville jerseys. I don't have his jersey, but it's my favorite goalie growing up with for a long time was Pekka Rinne. I became a goalie because of Tommy Salo, and then Pekka Rinne kind of took over, and
Nice.
that's when Nashville took over for me. And again, a guy my size or very big, 6'5", 6'6", with an extremely high athletic ability, and that's I feel like that's all I was for a very long time throughout my career, was just athletic, and I could get there one way or another, right? I could move well, not necessarily efficient, but I could get there and play like that. So guys like Mike Smith or Pekka Rinne, Mike Smith in his first 10 years in the league, I think was incredible. And then Pekka Rinne for me. And then funny enough, other favorite goalie, as you grow up and you watch more and you learn more, a guy like UC Saros, which is weird because it's total opposite of what I am. But it's you have to take things from other people's games. Like, and a big part of his was movement, right? And when you start breaking stuff down as you get older and learning to be structured and fundamentally sound, a lot of these other pieces kind of fall into place. So
No, that's interesting. So that kind of leads kind of into like the second part of my question. Then is it's just what skills do you think as a taller goalie should be kind of the important parts to focus on versus short goalies? I mean, again, like I find it interesting that, and I don't know how fruitful it would be really for a taller goalie to emulate somebody like UC Saros. And I guess there are some pros and cons to that in itself. Movement, like you said, being one of them, and kind of more structure. But obviously, a goalie such as your size, or over 6'3" or 6'5", wouldn't be able to play the same way as somebody like Saros or like Lundqvist or Bobrovsky or insert X goalie here. So just for you, what would you think would be the most important kind of skill development focuses for somebody over 6'3"?
that's funny you say Lundqvist, because I was going to use him as one example. Like I think you look at guys like Carey Price, Henrik Lundqvist, Devin Dubnyk in his prime. The biggest thing is less is more. You need to learn where your posts are and what's going to miss you and miss the net, and play compact, not robo goalie. I don't like that, and I don't like people not moving at all either. But once you learn angles, big thing, and then once you learn less is more, less movement. You don't need to push as far. You don't need to open up as well, and that's where you play with your depth. And that's again why Henrik Lundqvist, I think, is actually a great example of that. Like, he wasn't
Okay.
overly, I don't think he's overly tall, but he was probably a master class at less is more and knowing where his net is 100% of the time. He was perfect at that.
I think that's a good point to bring up, and thank you for humbling me on that. But but no, you're right there. I think just a lot of coaches in general would focus more on kind of the height part of it, and I think that's kind of where I was going with that particular question. It's like, don't pay attention to what somebody like Henrik Lundqvist or UC Saros or whoever's doing. It's like, play like Mike Smith or play like Devin Dubnyk, because you're similar in height and you're similar in athletic ability. So those are the guys
Right.
that you should be watching versus watching somebody like Carey Price or Henrik Lundqvist and kind of taking more the technical structure, if you will, and implementing that back into your own game.
Yeah, and I could see that too. Like I said, like athletic ability, movement. I think puck handling is huge for any size. Being able to do that and stop a breakout or forecheck or move the puck, be an extra D-man out there, it's a very high needed skill, no matter what your size is. And then, yeah, I don't know. Lundqvist is just, he plays in his mini hockey net is kind of what I got taught
Right.
when I started learning the structural side of the game. And it's hard to watch him, and you don't even understand how it works sometimes. But it's reading the release and cutting angles. And once you like, I did have the athletic ability, and that got me so far. But then the game picks up speed. Players are better. You have to start putting other pieces in, or you just start falling behind, right? And I think I got to a bitter end before I started learning the real structural side of it. And so I don't even now at my age now, I don't even think of it as play like somebody because you're the same body as them or size of them or you skate like them or whatever. It's you need to find what works, what you're successful at and what works for you. And then you need to understand weaknesses. We all have them. Nobody's perfect. And that's the being a goalie, just like anything in life. You get really good at a couple things, one thing always goes. You get good
Right.
at that, one thing always goes. And it's a constant movement of progression. And I think you just have to you have to look around and see what's working and add pieces to your toolbox, so to speak.
So I kind of want to go back to a couple of the things you had said. So first off, I know you had mentioned like the whole less is more thing, and you kind of hammered that home, which is obviously something we teach lots of when we're working with our goalies. Um, but just thinking about it, I'm kind of curious on your perspective. Like, do you think that as a goalie who is bigger, just because naturally you're going to have longer limbs than maybe a bit of a shorter goalie, like because we see so many goalies kind of panic, like they feel like they have to do more than they do you think having that kind of longer reach can almost be a bit of a hindrance sometimes because you can move further than you actually need to, like with kind of the longer limbs, the bigger body? Because like even if you look at the taller goalies, like when they're in their stance from the puck's perspective, there's so much of their body that's actually above the crossbar. So do
Yeah.
you think that like kind of having that extra real estate can almost, you know, mentally cause some sort of hindrance, just trying to think you have to reach more or anything like that? Is that something you kind of experienced when you played?
I do think that, yeah, and I actually agree with you. I think you look at a tall, long, lean athlete in anything, even like football. If you look at a really tall wide receiver, same problems to me. Diving, reaching out, and yeah, you over exaggerate until you learn your body, right?
Yeah.
And I think you do till that point. Being athletic, you think, okay, I can get there. I don't necessarily care how. And then, yeah, to an extent, you do just throw limbs out there, and if that gets you to some point, you're going to keep doing it, right? If you're successful. And so I do think that does happen to a certain point, and then you need to take a step back in your game and say, what I got to kind of piece this together all in one here because it's kind of a little messy, right?
Yeah. So then what do you kind of think can help then for goalies that are trying to figure that out? Like, so I know you probably went through it. You probably had a couple like pretty major growth spurts during your career and had to kind of manage that. Like, what advice do you have maybe for goalies out there that might be trying to navigate through that? Like maybe they shot up, 5 6 inches over the summer, or maybe they don't understand necessarily how much outside of the net their body is getting. Like, do you have any advice for goalies that are maybe struggling with that to kind of try and rein it in a little bit, be a little bit more structured, a little bit more patient?
I think something like we have going at the clinic, the cameras help. When I had to get structure into my game, that was, I think, the biggest thing that helped me was physically seeing it from a good, proper angle, not from somebody's camera in the stands, but from a good puck's point of view. And I like that we do that, and I've had success showing a couple younger clients that, yeah, like you said, where they are is their gloves are outside the posts, or they're hold their glove up and it's over the crossbar, right? It's or double coverage doing the opposite. So I'm sorry, where was this? What was the question again?
Just like advice that you have for goalies that are trying to navigate, like, you know, the
Right.
extra limb length they have, growth spurts, kind of trying to figure out their body a bit.
I think the two pieces of that are going to be camera. You need to see it, and you need to see it for yourself. What you're double coveraging or not covering at all if you're over the net or outside the posts. And the second thing I think is the biggest part of this is tracking, reading the release, and you once you learn to not overreact, and I like to call it be on top of the puck and let it all come to you instead of under the puck and then you're reaching and you get this stuff, right? And as an athlete with long limbs, that's the last thing you want to do, especially goalie in the fastest sport in the world. Stuff happens. You don't want to be reaching, opening up holes, sticking your leg up, reaching with your arm and your body's going the other way. So I think the two biggest things for me was seeing it myself and learning how to read a release and track really well.
Okay.
So then transitioning kind of that then back to your own playing career, how much do you think your height and your size played into the opportunities that you had throughout your career?
I think a fair bit. Like I grew up in a time where, look, we're talking about Mike Smith, Pecorine, Devin Dubnik.
Yeah.
Who else can I add to the list?
Shiger.
Yeah.
Shiger.
Yeah.
Like I was a little after Shiger, but
Yeah, but
no, I grew up. I did grow up in that time where the big Ben Bishop, the big blocky goalies was
Right.
kind of a thing, right? So I would say a little bit. Like for sure, it helped me. Um, I do think there's other parts of my game that I think helped me as well, but I won't lie. I think it makes a difference, and I think it made a difference at that time for sure.
And do you kind of think, like, what are your thoughts on the perspective of the kind of bigger is better thought process when it comes to hockey? Like, well, specifically goaltending. Like, do you think it's about the same as when we played, or do you think that there's kind of more of a shift away from that, or kind of what do you think the current landscape when it comes to goalie height is and kind of the perception? Because a lot of it is in the hands of people that really don't know much about goaltending.
Right.
But do you think people are becoming a little bit more open-minded to the smaller, shorter goalie, or do you think it's still kind of, they see six
I
foot
think
four?
so.
Yeah.
No, I think Jonathan Quick. You could put his name on that. I think they brought. I think it is going down. Not necessarily smaller is better, but I think they are looking at all the skill sets.
Yeah.
Like behind me, you see Saros, right?
Yeah. Dustin
Nobody
Wolf.
else can. Nobody else can move like him.
Yeah.
Dustin Wolf. I think he is fantastic to watch post to
Phenomenal.
post. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable to watch, and just how these guys move and can contain themselves and be in the right position. Like if you look, like I said about the camera and seeing the puck's point of view, you don't have to be very big to take up the whole net.
Yeah.
And I think the earlier you learn that as a kid moving up and you play like that, you can end up being someone like Dustin Wolf. Like he just moves so well and so efficient, and that's all because he knows what he has to take up, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, the shorter goalies, for those of you out there listening, um, the the big factor I see in the successful goalies that are around 6 feet, maybe slightly under, is just how good they are at skating. Like their edge work, their edge control, their rotations, their explosiveness. Like Saros and Wolf are kind of the prime examples of that. Like Wolf is so fun to watch just because of how good he can move. And it's crazy. Like you're like, oh, that's a goal. And then all of a sudden he's halfway across the net making those saves.
Yeah.
So, and I do think that's kind of the big differentiating advantage for the taller goalies is the ability to get across because you don't have to get as big of a push to get your body in the way. Other than that, though, I think that might be the biggest advantage. And if you can just bring whatever skill set you can to the highest level. The playing field, I think, is starting to level a bit more, and people are realizing
I
that,
think
which
so.
is good.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say like it's about managing the net at the same time and
yeah,
managing
Yeah.
kind of your angles, right?
Yeah.
Because
100%.
like again, like the again like what Troy was saying, and I was gonna kind of more so lean in towards like the box control side of things. The puck, like the amount of net that the puck sees is maybe 2% different compared to what a goalie of Dustin Wolf's size sees versus a goalie of Ben Bishop or insert X goalie here sees. It's still the same when it comes to the angle and kind of just how much net the puck sees when it's at different elevations on the ice. So, which kind of transitions nicely into kind of my next question here is, as a coach, very rarely are we going to see another goalie of your size or of Ben Disham's size as such. I mean, again, like we had kind of said at the
Right.
start, the general consensus size for goalies in the NHL are about 6'3". For goalies that are 11, 10 years old, they're maybe like what,
4
five,
foot something.
6, 4
Yeah.
foot something, whatever. So for you, Troy, as a coach, just does your approach change at all when you're teaching a taller goalie versus a shorter goalie, or is it kind of a general, basically the same along the board?
I it changes based on their style and what they're showing me, but I don't think I change my approach. My fundamentals are still the same, and I think it would benefit somebody 6'1", and it would benefit somebody 6'6", and it's
Agreed.
just about learning to control your body and not overreact, right? Contain yourself and stay compact. Like one of the students I've had here, Tobias, he came and it took him. I had one session with him, and it was about all. It was almost an hour of goaltending theory when I first saw him, and he's improved drastically. And I think that's just based off I was showing him what he's given me in the net, and I was showing him the angles and what the puck sees, and I think I like to teach. It's way as a big guy, like I said, not opening up holes. I think it's way easier to play here and you move out rather than coming in. And I think that's a very, again, that goes into tracking. I think it's easier to be in your stance and move out rather than chasing yourself in all the time. So I don't think I'd change my approach based on height. It's just it's kind of what they give me. I think it works for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Yeah.
we talk about that lots with the goalies we work with. Is inside out is always easier than outside in when it comes to stopping
Yeah.
pucks. So having tight
Yeah.
elbows and working out towards the puck for sure. And that's I know people, and I'm gonna get Connor going on this, but I know people like the whole cookie cutter goaltending whatever phrase, but it's one of those things that it's a general foundational thing that regardless of if you're out there at 5'2" or you're out there at 6'8", um, if you can focus on those general principles and then having a good situational awareness of the game and working towards your strengths, that's kind of what'll make anybody successful. So if you're out there at 5'2", don't get discouraged. You can still do
Yeah.
big things.
Right.
But
And again,
I got a quick story here on that and playing, like you said, moving outwards, not inwards. Was
yeah,
when I was in the Western Hockey League in Tri City. Carey Price met his wife there and came back to get married. So I got to practice for about 5 days with primetime Carey Price.
nice.
He came on out on the ice with us, and I was. This is when I kind of went from full athletic ability to really adding structure. And my goalie coach then was showing me consistent videos of Price and Lundqvist and how less is more and the amount of net they're taking up and just be more efficient within yourself, right? And then Carey Price shows up. And I'm in the corner and I'm just in awe of this guy, of how easy he makes it look. Granted, superstar NHL goalie practicing out on the ice with the Western Hockey Leaguers, but I don't think for 3-4 days he made a glove save, which sounds ridiculous. But this guy he knows where he is in his net, and it's you're only beating me left or right. That's all it is to this guy. And he reads the release, and somebody comes down the wall, reads the release, boom, down to the side. He eats it in the pants or the chest. And I'm like, how's this happening? And I'm just watching him and I'm trying to figure out, he's making it look so easy. There's no movement, no rebounds. Like I was just in awe. Any shot, he just corralled it. And it was, he knows where he's going to get beat. He knows where his net is, right? He knows where his open spots are, and that's usually low glove, low blocker, 5-hole. That's almost all the puck can see, and that back into opening up holes. A lot of goals go in because you actually move out of the way.
Yeah.
Price never moved out of the way. I watched him for 4 days, and it was remarkable.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I do want to, we are going to get into a little bit about your career and kind of going that route. But just before we touch on that, I want to throw you 2 quick curveballs. And the first one is, I'm curious your perspective on the RVH when it comes to, as a taller goalie, do you think that it's okay to sit in it a little longer or to be in it a little earlier? Or are you still of the camp that it might be drastically overused or used at the wrong time? Like, how does your perspective on that change based off of how the goalie or how big the goalie is?
Well, it's hard for me to put my perspective into it sitting in my basement and ridicule some NHL goalies. But I do think it's overused, and I think it is a common mistake because you do get there, and post play was hard for me. I really had to get good at it, and I ended up cheating. I was an overlapper just because I know I can get post to post. That wasn't an issue for me. So I overlapped. I was so scared of getting beat short side. But when it comes to your post, I'm still a firm believer. Dead angle, close in, you can be in your RVH. If they're out on the wall, you got to stand up. There's just the last couple of years you've seen goalies get beat over their ear from the outside of the circle down low, right? And I do think that's too far. But it's players know that, right? They know they're walking into that angle of a goalie being like holding. Okay, now I'm going to go RVH, right? These players in the NHL are just as smart as the goalies. They're figuring us out. So I do think it's overused. I think people stay in it a little too long or too early, but I still think it's very useful in your dead angle. That's all I would play in.
Yeah, for sure. And then the second thing was, I know I had texted you about it at some point during the season because we billeted a 16-year-old defenseman who was 6'4", and he was struggling with like a lot of like lower back pain and kind of like, shin splint type pain that we think was just growing. And I know you mentioned when I was asking you about it that you kind of struggled with stuff like that too. So, for goalies that are kind of experiencing these massive growth spurts, like, do you have any advice to kind of help with that sort of stuff, like kind of some of the pain and maybe being able to get through it on, training days or ice times or anything like that?
I think stretching is a huge thing. I didn't do enough of it, and
Fair.
stretching and mobility, you gotta keep up to date on that. Stretching and mobility is the two biggest things. But the pain, I know what you're talking about. I've had them in my. I don't know if I'd call them shin splints necessarily, but I've had that shin pain
Yeah.
from growing. my back was usually okay, but shin pain for sure. I remember I grew up in a different time though, running stairs, and it was like go go go. They didn't want excuses, right? And you just had to battle through it. And all the kids are growing. What do you mean you're special? So it's a different time now, and I just think mobility and stretching, like those shin splints, you got to stretch. Like those are little fibers in your shin, stretching both ways. You got to keep your body mobile, essentially. Other than that, a good dose of Rub A535.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So leading away from that and kind of going back to you here, kind of tell us about your time with or in the WHL and kind of attending those camps, and then as well as your experiencing attending NHL development camps.
I think, well, both were pretty brief, but I think because of my height and lack of structure, I do think I would call myself a late bloomer. I do feel I was year a year behind people a bit smaller than me that were just better at certain things, right? And I always so I went, like, I played all 3 years midget, and then I went to the SJ into Melville. I had success there enough that's where Tri City actually called me up because Eric Comrie had a season-ending injury. So I got there as a third guy, emergency guy, and I played. I sat on the bench for about 2 weeks, and I played. I got one crack at the can, and it was on my way to uh, Memorial Gardens in Portland against the Memorial Cup champs of a team there with Seth Jones and Bjorkstrand and Ratty, and I was like, "Uh-oh, this might not be a good night." Coming out winning that game.
Oh.
Then I kind of played the next one, played well in one, and kind of took over in Tri-City for that year. So that was really good. And I got to thank Bob Torrey, the GM of Tri-City, he's probably the only general manager I've had be 100% honest. And at the end of that year, he said, "We want you here. You had a hell of a season. Comrie's back, right? So do you want to stay here, or would you like to open the door somewhere else if something came up?" And I did tell him, I said, "I want to stay here unless it's going to be a starting role somewhere else. I'm not gonna move and go play for a different team if it's going to be backing anybody up." So, and he held his word. It went through the off season, and I ended up going to Saskatoon and played another year there. The year after they hosted the Mem Cup, so that was a pretty rough year. That was I think 14 or 15 kids were still in high school on that team. So
Yeah,
then but yeah, so Bob Torrey actually got me. I think he kind of had some influence on it after my first year in Tri City. Got me a call by Edmonton, and being at Edmonton development camp was awesome. Like, it's a hometown for us. Uh, Everything we did is around here. I actually had to go stay at the hotel downtown. They didn't let anybody stay home, so it made me feel a part of it. I didn't want to be the hometown kid just here because it's your hometown, right? So to get the full treatment everyone else is, you get put up in the hotel, you're with everybody all the time, on the ice with those guys. Like, it's awesome. And then you go to all your ice times are either we're at the old Rexall or Millennium Place in Sherwood Park, and to have family and friends all come out because I'm from here. It was really awesome.
yeah. How does that compare to your experience in Buffalo?
Different. I was alone in Buffalo.
Oh.
I actually I flew my dad out, but I didn't get to see much of him. So I knew he was at the rink all the time watching, but that was I think I was a little bit too shy. It would have been nice to come out of my shell a little earlier. Like, back then would have been a really good time. But No, it's awesome. The kind of the personal or team combine they put on, like it's strenuous, and I feel like just looking back at it for any kid trying to make it or with the will to make it, like I worked hard and I was right there, and it's like to work just that much harder
Yeah.
would make a world of difference. So it was an awesome experience, and I'm so thankful for it though.
So if anyone out there listening finds themselves at kind of an NHL development camp, I know a lot of times those are kind of long shots, but do you have any advice for anyone who's attending one that can maybe help them to stand out a little bit, like just based off of your experience and kind of what you noticed and saw? Like, what do you think really helps guys stand out and maybe get another look or opportunity after camp?
I think this sounds dumb, but I think it plays a big factor. They want you have to go into it thinking they want to talk to a young man, not a boy, right?
Yeah.
You have to carry yourself with confidence, be a character, be noticed, and be respected by them talking to you. So you have to carry yourself with a presence, like everything off ice. You have to be responsible. They have to know you're a young man, not a boy, and it I think that makes a big difference for the off ice stuff and just the way you carry yourself, right? On ice stuff, I think a big part of my game that I think helped me a lot was weird again for a tall guy, but skating. That got drilled into me as a young age. I think I was a very good skater. Number two was puck playing ability. Like I was beating in midget or junior, like I was beating players. I could shoot harder than them, and I could probably beat them in a skating drill.
Yeah.
Worst ones on the team. So it's certain stuff makes you stand out, but I do think the biggest one might be the off ice stuff is they have to remember talking to you, right?
Um, so again, guess going from that to hanging up the skates, making that transition into coaching. I guess we can kind of tell a little bit of a story over here about how both you and Nathan kind of got together, and then with Nathan bringing you on here with True North Goaltending, and then what made you decide to make that switch from playing to coaching?
I Yeah, you have to call it at some point and retire. So that was tough.
Yeah,
I did a
felt.
lot of coaching. I did a lot of coaching with my goalie coach growing up as I kind of came up through the ranks. And then when hockey got really serious, that came to a stop. And then it was junior NHL camps, college, all that. And then ending college, it's kind of the end. And I never wanted to. I've hurt myself playing senior, so I kind of officially hung him up. I won't even go play. I'm going to hurt myself. I don't take care of myself like I should be to be playing goalie. But
Yep.
I never wanted to be out of the game. I coached before, and it's funny actually. Before you reached out to me, I was thinking, I was like, who can I talk to or text? Who do I still have that I could ask for just the odd hours, do some sessions like I did growing up, right? Like I don't want to be out of the game, and I wanted to give it back. So it was just kind of really timely of when you reached out to me.
Yeah. Well, and former guest Taylor Joseph, I think, was the one that brought up Troy's name and was like, "Hey, I think Troy's looking to get back into coaching." So yeah, because
It was. I remember him texting me about that too.
yeah, so because yeah, Troy and I played against each other back in midget as well as in college. So that's kind of never really personally met until we started coaching together, but played against each other a few times for sure.
Funny how things come full circle on that.
Yeah, well,
it
as
is.
we all know, the goalie community is very small, so
Yeah.
it's not hard. Um, so just because I know you talked earlier about being a bit of a late bloomer, you kind of talked about your WHL experience, and you obviously came back to Alberta, played college in the ACAC with Red Deer. Um, do you think that, like, with the new rule changes now that CHL players can go and play in the NCAA as well, um, do you think that that maybe would have played in your favor as somebody like looking to advance their career? Like, do you think you maybe could have gone the NCAA route post WHL? And looking back at it, do you kind of think you made the right choice going the WHL route, or do you think you would have rather kind of tried to go the NCAA route?
I'll answer the second one first. If I could do it again, would I go that route? Or no, I wouldn't. Unless you're a superstar coming out of that league at 18 to 20, it's almost the end of the road. And before this NCAA rule shifted, like I had to be enrolled in school within 1 year, or I'd lose all my schooling.
Yeah.
So that rule was really tough because then you're putting a 20, 21-year-old kid in a spot of, do I go play pro somewhere else? Do I try to go to Europe? But then you risk 3 to 5 years of schooling and your future almost on it. It's a hard decision to make.
Yeah.
If I could go back and do it, I think the other way would have been more successful for me. Like I said, late bloomer. I had I had 2 good years in the Western Hockey League, 2 and a little bit. I also had 2 years in junior that were very good. One was my first year junior, and one was my overage year. And when I came back and played Bonnyville Pontiacs, and no, to be honest, I'm kind of, before this rule switched, I was kind of kicking myself and going, I could have played junior the whole time and been, my phone would have rang, is what I'm saying. So that's tough. And looking at it now, I think it's very good that rule's in. I would have went immediately. I think you need that. I played my 2 billet brothers played on my team in Bonnyville.
Yeah.
They were both good, not the greatest. One was younger than the other one. He had more potential. He actually signed in Vermont. Had too many D-men. He withdrawed. The next year, ASU comes into Dev 1, and they wanted both brothers. So they came out of junior, went to ASU, and instead of 18, 19, like everybody wants it, they played those couple years at ASU after junior, and one side signed an NHL contract and the other one signed an AHL contract. So you can't look at this and being like, I want it now. It's You have to want it now, but you have to understand it might not happen now. The best thing for you could be 2 extra years. So no, I think that would have been really nice, and it's kind of kicking the pants that it's a thing now because it's like
Yeah.
too little, too late. But
That seems to be a lot of things nowadays, is that, like a lot of the changes that are being made in the sport now definitely would have benefited us back when we played a very long time ago. Unfortunately,
I think
comes
that's a
too
big
little
one.
too late. But I guess just with that, then, because we had this discussion on the podcast however many episodes ago, and so we'll put this question to you: is just knowing what you know now in terms of how the position is being played, would there be anything that you would go back in your career and change, or are you content with kind of how everything turned out for you?
I'm in my unfinished basement, so I'm not necessarily content with it. But no, I'm happy the way things turned out. If I could go back and change one thing, I think it got drilled. Skating got drilled into me. All these other things got drilled into me, and I was very good at them. And the one thing I lacked was a little bit of structure and self control. If I could go back and learn, everyone's learning angles, but when I mean angles, I mean playing within your net, angles, being square, less is more. The structure side. If I could learn all that, if I could have learned that a few years earlier, I think that would have really helped. And I like teaching that now. Kids are picking up on it, and I think it is helping them, and they're realizing you don't have to. You can get rid of the windmill. You don't have to do that, right? That's opening up holes, and it's not good for your second save option if you, Lord forbid, ever needed to make a second save, right? You're in no position to do so. So I think learning that at a younger age would have been really beneficial.
And then what would be your piece of advice for goalies out there nowadays?
Piece of advice. Oh, it's hockey. There's way too many. Don't give up. No matter how hard you're working, work harder. You'll thank yourself later for it. And just listen. I always tell my clients at the end. I said, okay, are you understanding everything here? Do you have any questions? If you do, ask me, because I want it to make sense to them, and I need to know it makes sense to them, or else it is just kind of in one ear and out the other. So I think in training and in that hour one-on-one or whatever it may be, I think the one-on-ones are very important, because they can be theory discussion or they can be reps, right? Once you dial something in, you can hammer out the reps. Once you figure out the theory behind it, you hammer the reps. So I think a big thing is just be open, listen, and if you don't understand, say so. It can be explained differently. I just think be open about it. Open learning is always the best. You're not going to get in trouble for not listening. It's okay if you don't understand. There's no such thing as a dumb question, right? So if you want to improve, I think questions and understanding why you're doing what you're doing is the best thing for you.
I'm going to continue on here because Nathan seems to be on the struggle bus here. So, Troy, I guess first up, pleasure to have you on staff with us at True North Goaltending. The conversations that you and I have had have been enlightening. And then, as well as just from Nathan and myself, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. Before we let you go, where can people find you if they have any questions or anything about goaltending?
On the True North website, or I think the only thing I have going is pretty much Instagram.
Okay, and so the
Troy
handle
Trombley
is
there on Instagram.
Troy Trombley.
Right. Now you're gonna make me check, but Troy Trombley, it's my normal name.
We'll link all that down in the show notes there. So, goalies, if you have any questions for Troy, you can reach out to us at goalies@truenorthgoaltending.com, or you can reach out to him on the Instagram at Troy Trombley. Nathan, any final parting thoughts you want to get in here before we might have to shoot you to the moon? Gonna take that as a no.
You guys are cutting out so much. I'm assuming you're chirping me, but I have no idea.
And on that note, we will leave it here at the at this episode with the DIY Goalie podcast presented by True North Goaltending. If you're listening on your favorite podcasting platforms, whether that be Apple, iHeart, or Spotify, if you're a returning listener, thank you. If you are a new listener, make sure you hit that follow button and just hit the share button in general, because the more goalies that we're able to bring to our little community, the better. If you are following us on the YouTube side of things, again, same deal. If you're a returning viewer, thank you. Make sure you hit the like button. If you are a new viewer to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button at True North Goaltending. And again, same deal. Make sure you share the link to this video across the social media platforms, because again, the more goalies that we can bring together, the better. You can follow us on our social media platforms, whether that be Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. It's all True North Goaltending, except for Instagram, because we like to be different. That one is YEG Goalie Coach. You can check us out at our website, www.truenorthgoaltending.com. We do still have some open spots for our summer camps happening in late July and as well as early August. So make sure you go check those out. A lot of fun stuff there. Like Nathan had said at the start of this podcast, we are virtually at the tail end of moving everything over from the DIY Goalie website over to True North Goaltending. So make sure you check back on the website, and again, check back on our social media platforms to make sure that, or just to see when everything that has been transferred over. You can follow myself on Instagram at MondayGC. And any questions or anything of the sort, please feel free to reach out to us at goalies@truenorthgoaltending.com. Until then, goalies, it's been a fun one. Make some saves. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Thank you, guys.